Hi, Mascot here, and today I'm going to be giving you my thoughts on the 2017 content poll survey, whatever it is. Um, yeah, today Jagex held the Summer Summit, which was a big 5-hour event that showcased new content that is potentially going to be made for 2017 based on survey results, some old school stuff, the stuff that's coming up for the rest of this year, as well as Chronicle and things about Idle Adventures. But really, the point of this Thoughts On is to be talking about 2017 and the potential updates that are being pulled in the survey currently. So, Jagex this time split potential updates into 5 categories, those being skills, combat, quests, systems, and reworks. So, I'm just going to go through in that order, pretty much the order that was in the poll, and just talk about what I thought of each specific proposed update. So in the skill, not skull, that's a different thing. In the skill section, it opens with the clue scroll rework. Not even necessarily a rework, but it was talking about adding several new tiers of clue scrolls as well as skilling scrolls that you can get while skilling that'll have specific skilling based activities. New puzzles, new rewards, and really just new ways to do clue scrolls. I personally gave this I believe I gave it a 6. I I like clue scrolls. I think improving them would be nice, but I don't know how hugely important that is to me. Clue scrolls are relatively entertaining, but just every time Jagex seems to introduce new things to clue scrolls, it never seems to work out very well. So I tentatively gave it a 6. I thought that was a decent idea, but I don't know how far they would go with that. Next up was the custom skill hotspots, which seems to be related to construction. On the stream itself, they made comparisons like you walk up with your skill gear and drop down a drill next to a rock that has ore in it, and players can all hop onto the skill spot and make use of it. I thought this was pretty great, actually. This would be a good use as surface level construction instead of just relegating everything into your player owned house, and would provide a lot of interesting skilling possibilities that previously would just seem like something locked behind microtransactions. I would be all for seeing this. I gave it a 7 on my survey just because I knew that the construction rework was on this survey, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. And I wasn't sure why this was pulled as something separately when it really could just be something as part of a construction rework. Next up was skilling pets. This was straight up just compared as boss pets, but from skills. I'm personally not really a pet person. I don't care about boss pets. I probably wouldn't really care about skill pets. Like, we have, what, 2 of them in game now? One of them being the hermit crab, and there's one other one that I'm already forgotten about, but I know there's another one or something. And I don't know, I don't find myself walking around with a pet out very often. I don't find myself using overrides all that much when I use summoning familiars. Like, I just set it as like the pirate sheep or something and left it and forgot about it. So personally, this doesn't really hold a lot of sway to me. I gave it a 7 just because I know there's a lot of people that would really enjoy this, especially if they were added as overrides as well. But personally, it's not really all that exciting to me. This next one though, this one really caught my eye. Dungeoneering Track 2. In essence, this update would be a new location to train Dungeoneering with new themes, new bosses, new monsters, new puzzles. And as part of the Menefos suggestion that I put forward during the city new area, Rune Labs, a friend of mine, Hellring, suggested potentially doing Dungeoneering floors underneath Menefos in the catacombs. And I was a big fan of that. So seeing the Dungeoneering Track 2 here really makes me hope that if Menefos is successful enough on the survey to make 2017, that if they do Dungeoneering 2, it could be desert or Menefos themed, and that really goes well with me. I gave that a 9. I really, really liked that idea. This next one, this next one is awesome. In fact, it's kind of the salvage of an update that got canceled from I think last year. It's the player-owned farm and greenhouse. The livestock player-owned farm thing was an idea that was floating around for a while. With Zeror's ranching skill, that's an old classic from the forums. And it was either this year or last year, I can't remember, was going to be made. like we were going to get not ranching skill, but we were going to get some sort of cattle or livestock raising mini game in our player owned house or in a player owned farm, and then apparently got canceled because it was getting too expansive. Combining that with a player owned greenhouse where we can grow our own plants, maybe mutate them, ooh, that's just awesome. It's got a lot of possibility, a lot of room to grow. I wouldn't even say no to calling it a ranching skill. But I'm a big fan of the player owned greenhouse and animals. So yeah, huge support for that. I'd really like to see that done. And then the last one in the skill section is something they called specialization. Bleh, can't speak today. I don't know how I feel about this one. The basic idea is as you train your skill, you can specialize in a specific type of activity within that skill. And it always seemed to be mining and smithing that got the examples, which made me rate this a little bit lower because it sounds like just something that could be part of the confirmed mining and smithing rework we're getting in September this year. But basically, like, if you're doing fletching and you want to be the master of the longbow, you specialize in longbows, and all the longbows you make are a little bit better than everybody else's longbow, and people can come to you to improve their longbows or something like that. The idea seems okay, but I don't know how in depth or how interesting that really is. It has some room for growth, but I only gave it a 6 just because I really I don't know how to feel about this one. I would need more details and really just a more fleshed out system before it's something I'd really want to see Jagex committing to. So that's the end of the skills section. And onward to combat, I guess. The first idea they put forward is raising the Slayer level to 120. I gave this a 7, just right up. I like Slayer. It's a profitable, sort of activity in the game. It's got a lot of diversity, and that's actually why I gave it a 7. Is it something I think would be really cool, especially with a whole slate of new monsters? But we get so many Slayer updates in this game, it's actually a little ridiculous. So I don't know if 2017 is the right time to be putting in such a massive update like Slayer. Being raised to 120. It's huge. It would require 20 whole levels of new content for the game, experience rates being raised for the skill with these new monsters, probably another Slayer Master to go along with it, new dungeons, new locations. That's a big update, and committing all of that to Slayer when we're already being piled on with all these new Slayer monsters isn't necessarily something I think the game needs right now. Next up was a solo boss. I gave this a 3. We're getting a solo boss next month. Like, I don't think we need another solo boss so quickly. After next month, we'll have a total of 6 new bosses just in this year alone. And, I mean, I know the PVM community goes through them very quickly, gets used to them, knows the rotations, can farm them perfectly, but honestly, I don't think we need another new solo boss quite that quickly. After that is a new Slayer dungeon that was described as exploration heavy. I thought the concept seemed interesting. The concept art was kind of cool too. It had like a abandoned like fossil theme to it, which was interesting. And I know it's just concept art. I gave this a 7. I don't really have anything against Slayer dungeons. Again, it's another Slayer update. We don't really need another Slayer update. But a Slayer dungeon is at least a worthwhile thing to spend time on because it adds room for new monsters, and it also adds interesting new locations, but isn't like committing to Slayer to 120. However, it worries me too because, like I said, Slayer is oversaturated like crazy and isn't something I think we need a ton of extra time on yet. The next one was Raids 2. I give this an 8. And honestly, the reason I gave it an 8 might be a little stupid, but I really want to see the continuation of this strange glowing orb storyline that we have that was added by Mod Robin. I'm really interested to see where that goes, how it ties into the story of Mazcab. The raids have offered some really good story experiences, and I'm eager to see where they'd go from there. I actually have very little raids experience. I haven't even done a Yakamaru kill, even though I've watched tons of videos on it. I just have not done it. I don't really have an excuse, to be honest. But raids are very cool. I like team-based content, and I think another round of raids is probably a better choice than a Slayer boss. The next 2 are PvP-based updates. The first one they call Hunger Games, because I guess that's the kind of the comparison now. Old School's actually doing a version of this fairly soon. Basically, you're dropped into an arena with standardized stats, and you have to put stuff together and duke it out, and winner takes all. I gave this a 7. Concept's decent. I don't really know how lively this would be, but the idea of PvP arenas that rely on everybody making their stuff from scratch, have, equalized skills, and it's all based on how good you are as a combatant, is certainly a very cool idea, and it's something I could see could, be a lot of fun, good streaming content as well. Next up was the Wilderness Rejuvenation. I rated this really low. I gave this a 2. I don't think we need it. We're getting a complete bounty hunter overhaul very soon. We're getting the PvP arena. They're making a PvP ecosystem. I don't want to be rating something related to the Wilderness Rejuvenation very highly until we've seen the effects of these 2 major PvP updates that we're getting soon. I rated it lowly simply because it's something where it's a wait and see. I don't think dedicating a whole month to rejuvenating the wilderness is necessary if the wilderness is already rejuvenated by the time we get there. And then the last one was Wandering World Bosses. Basically, occasionally a world boss would spawn, and groups of players would have to get together and fight them. Concept's alright. It reminds me a little bit of Guild Wars 2 with their major world bosses with hundreds and hundreds of players piling into a map instance to take down this massive monster as it swings about wildly at the little gnats underneath its feet. On the stream, some people mentioned the idea of tying this into a weather system that's brought up in the systems update section. It's a pretty cool concept. I gave this an 8. I could definitely see this being cool as long as it doesn't fail reward-wise like the demon monsters. So, yeah, that one seems pretty decent. And that's the end of the combat ones, and onto my personal favorite category, as you probably know if you're watching this, the quests. We got, 10 quests that we were asked to pick from? And I didn't pick all of them for my final slate, even though it might sound like I would be the type of person to do that. So the quests that we were given as options are a gnome finale, which I gave a 7. I'm probably going to get yelled at by a couple certain people for this. I'm not all that hyped for gnomes. It's been a while since the last gnome quest, and that last gnome quest wasn't particularly excellent, and I don't think the gnome series is ready for a finale yet. We just were introduced to this new villain, Glauk, and I think it needs more than one quest just to end things off. Though I do know that Modmalia apparently has a design document that wraps everything up. So I would be eager to see this doing well. It's just not personally my pick. Pirates was the next one. I give this an 8. I want the next pirate quest, especially with all of the really interesting Zautak hype that Mod Wilson's been creating by sneaking that lore into quests he's been involved in. I am really, really eager to see what's going on with the pirates, what's up with Zautak, and how their story moves into the 6th Age. After that was Dimension of Disaster 2, Falador. I gave this a 7. I like the idea. I talked with the creator of Vernic about some ideas for it, but I'm personally a little more interested in Dimensions of Disaster set in Arjun. I feel like that has more quest content that's more applicable, has another wicked Majorat ruler that would fit perfectly within the story. So I like the concept of doing a Dimension of Disaster 2, I just don't know if Falador is the right pick. After that is the first thing I gave a 10 to. Of course I gave a 10 to it. It's the Desert Quest. The second highest idea on Rune Labs right now is 2017, the year of the desert. So honestly, I gave a 10 to this, not just because I want one desert quest. I want 2, I want 3, I want 4. I want all the desert quests. Give me every desert quest possible. I'd love to see the desert series wrapped up next year, and I really, really hope the desert quests do well in the survey, because getting more desert quests and moving that series into a place where it can be finished is really important to me. I think it's the 5th Age series that is furthest from completion, so the more desert content we can get created in the game, the better. Next up was the Elder Gods pitch. I gave this a 6. I mean, it's one of the 6th Age pillars, but With Heart of Stone being the start point, I don't think a quest that wakes up or shows us the bodies of the Elder Gods is really what is necessary next. I really think we need to take the series slowly, go one at a time, delving into the histories of the Elder Gods and learn what they want, what they're doing. I think the series needs to make sure it slows down and takes its time, and I don't think the pitch that they had here for an Elder God quest is the right one. Next up is a penguin quest. I gave this a 6. I like the penguin quests. They're hilarious, they're funny, they're entertaining, and they're small in scale, and they're okay. I really, really enjoyed the penguin mini quest that was released as the Christmas event in 2015, and I kind of wish that had stayed in the game, but with these options that were given and how many quests were limited to, apparently per year at 6, or maybe a little bit more, I don't think Penguins is really top of my list at the moment for a series that needs continuation. After that was Elemental Workshop 5. I gave this a 9. I like the Elemental Workshop series. I like difficult puzzles. I like those sorts of things that will make me think and make me puzzle my way through these experiences for an interesting and really underrated story. However, I don't expect this to do well on the survey. I don't expect this to be made next year. I'd love for Jagex to surprise me. I'd love for the players to surprise me. But I honestly think just Jagex needs to let Mod Doctor, whoever they're going to let make this quest, just make it. Don't pull it. Just release it and make sure it's quality, because if it's quality, we have more of a likelihood of getting this series wrapped up, and then people can stop whining about it. It's a great series, and I'd really like to see it resolved. After that is Death of Chivalry 2. This is the Sir Owen storyline, involving Ceridoman and the Centaurs and mysterious tombs and all that jazz. I gave this a 9. I'm really eager to see a continuation of this. This is, in fact, the 6th Age story I'm most interested in, ironically. With these Dragonkin and Elder Gods and Slisky going on, I'm really just mostly interested in this interesting story of Ceridominus history, the Centaurs, and good old Sir Owen. I'd like to see this made really badly. After that is a Godless quest. I gave this an 8. Godless need a quest. Frankly, that's the reason it got a high score from me. I didn't really, they didn't have much of a concept for this quest. It was just, we're making a Godless quest. And that's fine by me. It's one of 2 factions that does not have a quest right now. So it makes sense to make a Godless quest. And finally is Rite of Passage, the other quest themed around a god that doesn't have a quest yet. I gave this a 7. I like the concept of this. It's a little too world gate. I don't know. I just don't understand how this one's going to work as a quest concept. It's themed as low-level content, but seems to require a lot of high-level content to make function properly. And I'm not the hugest fan of the way it's been pitched so far. I'm tired of hearing about it. Everybody's tired of hearing about it. I think you understand. I'd like to see it get made, but just maybe not 2017. And that's the end of the quest section, so on to systems. The first one they offered is player-owned shops. I gave this a 3. I don't care about this. We have the Grand Exchange, we have general stores. I don't really think player-owned shops offers anything different or unique through gameplay that the Grand Exchange doesn't already offer. Not super interested. After that is mounts. I gave this a 0. This is the worst thing they've pitched on this survey. We don't need mounts. The world is tiny enough already. We have lodestones, we have teleports. We can run from one edge of the map to the other in, under 20 minutes. I don't think adding mounts offers anything gameplay that is important, and graphically it's absolutely a mess. Just the concept art was huge and unwieldy, and no. There's very little they could do, honestly, to convince me to like this. I think maybe billing it as some sort of summoning expansion could be potentially interesting, but it's not enough to make me give this anything more than a 0. I don't want to see this. After that is the Pet Battler. I think this could go a long way to actually making pets a little more interesting and worthwhile in the game, especially if this was tied into summoning. I only gave this a 5, though, because the concept seemed too similar to Rat Pits, which they just removed because nobody used it. It seems very weird that they'd remove an awful minigame and then pitch something that sounds functionally very similar to said minigame. I would need to see more information about this and really what they'd want to do with the design. before I feel like it's something I'd really want to see made. As I mentioned earlier with the skilling pets too, I'm not all that huge of a fan of pets in general, but something to make them more interesting and more worthwhile certainly wouldn't be hated. After that is Prestige. I gave this a 3. They went with a Prestige concept. Mod Jack wrote up a whole design document and it got pulled and it failed horribly. Prestige, I don't think, is something we really need in the game, especially with the amount of microtransaction based experience gains we have. I feel like this would throw high scorers into a turmoil for those who care about that sort of thing. I don't think resetting down to level 1 and actually having to use level 1 training methods is all that good, no matter what benefits it gives. I don't think Prestige has a place in the game in its current incarnation. Next up is an achievement / collections system. So kind of like your good old Steam achievements, you finish a specific thing and get a reward for it. I could see this being interesting. I gave this a 6, just because I don't really know what their goals for this are. Like, we already get rewards for completing quests, leveling up your skills offers new rewards. So I don't really know what an achievement collections system would offer to the game. However, I'm a player of Guild Wars 2, and I think their collections and achievement system is actually very, very good. So basing it off of that could definitely be a boon for the game. So this is something I could see doing well. And finally was the weather system. I have been seeing so much hype for this all over the forums, all over Reddit, even in the Twitch chat and the YouTube chats. This seems interesting, especially with actual gameplay tied into it, like Mod Osborne and others discussed after the announcement of this. While it's an NXT only feature, which is a good thing, moving over to the NXT client as it improves is definitely a good thing. I could see the gameplay associated with this being really interesting, especially in conjunction with things like the Wandering World bosses. So yeah, I gave this a 7. I'd be interested in this. And that's the end of the system sections. And finally, moving on to the reworks. The first thing they brought up was a chat rework. The real goal of the chat rework actually just seems to be related to offering a player mailbox. I'd like a player mailbox. That could be nice. However, Chat seems fine in its current form. Honestly, we can recolor our chat. We have various chat functions and options. I don't really know how necessary a full chat rework really is, especially if something like an offline mailbox could be easily implemented. I gave this a 5, just because on the scale of the reworks that are offered here, this is the one that seemed least interesting to me. Next up was a clan rework. I gave this a 10. Clans need a rework. The code is awful. They just said so in both the discussion of this and the afterwards, like when they talked about what they thought about these things. Clans need a rework. Citadels need a rework. Clan permissions are a mess. I'm a clan leader. I hate the way clan permissions work. Nothing in the rework section needs to be made more than the clan rework. Honestly, it's a game with such a thriving social scene if you dive into it, and it's horrible that something like clans is so underused and so painful. Next up is an agility rework. Not really all that excited about this, honestly. I like agility. It's relaxing, it's quiet. It's a little bit of a slow skill, but actually when I say a little bit, it's very slow skill. However, it's not something I care about all that much. I don't think an agility rework is necessary and must happen as much as the mining and smithing rework that's coming this year, as a construction rework, and as rebalances to skills like crafting and fletching will be needed after the mining and smithing rework wraps up. So I gave this a 5. Next up was a bank rework. I gave this a 6. I do think new bank functionality is very important. However, it's a large project to take up a lot of the ninjas' time, since they seem to be the one that would be getting that. And I'm a lot more interested in the clan rework and the construction rework that I'm going to talk about next. And next, like I said, construction rework. They even showed a prototype of some of the things that they're working on, which involves being able to add doors to various rooms, move your hotspots around, very similar to the aquarium. And that's awesome. Construction needs a rework. It's one of the most useless money sink skills in the game. You sink all this money into building this epic house, and the only thing it's really useful for is prayer training. And maybe some teleports, but lodestones killed the teleport rooms, let's be real. construction is in dire need, and I think out of all the skills in the game, construction, fletching, crafting, maybe fire making for usefulness, and then agility. So yeah, construction's really up there. And then finally, a player model rework is the last thing on this survey. And I give this a 6. The player model needs an update, yeah, but I don't know if we need to go as in-depth as they seem to be talking about here. They were mentioning things like, being able to customize your nose and your mouth and your ears and your eyes. Like, I don't need a Skyrim character generator here. It's still a game that was made initially in Java, and it's not the most beautiful game out there, and I don't spend all that much time zoomed in on my player enough that I need to tweak the details of her nose. So, it was okay. In my top 12, I believe I included a number of the quests, especially the desert quest, things like Menaphos. So, that was important to me. And then, of course, I actually totally forgot to mention this at the start. Yeah, but then also the exploration section. There was a couple on here. I have it on the second page of the things I wrote down and forgot to turn the page. Yeah, exploration. On offer were Menaphos, which I immediately gave a 10 to because I pitched Menaphos. I love Menaphos. We need Menaphos in the game. It's the Desert series. It's controlled by a mascot. It has a ton of awesome story, soul altar, potential raids, potential port rework, 4 unique districts, grand library, dungeoneering, catacombs. Just give me Menaphos. It's awesome. We really need that. Next was a mysterious continent that we've never heard of or seen before. The way they described it, basically, it would be a continent that as we explore it, it grows. You could claim sections for yourself or your clan, and it would basically be something we kind of build throughout the year as players uncover new things. That seemed kind of interesting. I gave it I think I gave it a 6 or a 7. I don't really remember. And the concept seemed interesting, but I wasn't really sure if it was something I wanted over things like the other options on this poll. Next up was the underwater city, which I gave a 9 to. I have an old concept for the underwater city laying around that a friend of mine and I and several others wrote quests for, called Desuno, and it was like an underwater city that was ravaged by the Dagonoth, and you'd get to learn their origin through this city and meet some like horribly cursed and warped offshoots of Avian Sea that were underwater, called the Avian Sea, as in the ocean. Yeah, we were real funny. And I don't know, I'd love to see kind of a similar concept to that used, or really just something completely different, but underwater content in the game is really lacking, and would certainly be an interesting thing to introduce. And then last was the Eastern Lands, the Skull region. I gave this a 5. We're getting the Eastern Lands, the Ark this year. Things like Menaphos, Arpazandra, Underwater City, Fossil Island need to be made before I think the Eastern Lands need to be expanded further. Great concept. It's something I'll definitely be on board with in the future. Just not 2017. And that's the end of the entire survey, I believe. I don't think I'm forgetting anything else. I can't believe I actually almost forgot the biggest and most interesting part, that being the exploration with the new cities and locations. Yeah, overall, my top 12 mostly involved Menaphos, a number of quests, the clan rework, as well as the I think I had the Wandering World bosses on there as well. There was a lot of good things to choose from, and narrowing it down to 12 was fairly difficult. Numbering it 1 to 12 was also really difficult, but my tops were really just Menaphos, Desert Quest. Give me those. And everything else in 2017 is less important to me than finally making a move on desert content, in my mind. But really, really good survey overall. I'm interested in a wide variety of these pieces of content, and I'm especially eager to see what player reaction is. I'm really looking forward to seeing what RuneFest has to offer this year with, how the survey goes and other ideas that the JMods have that they'd like to do next year that weren't on the survey. All in all, yeah, really interested, and good survey. Thank you, Jagex, for doing the Summer Summit today. It was really just an insightful event that, had a lot to offer. And, yeah, thank you for listening. I'd love to hear in the comments what your personal favorites were, what you voted on, what you'd hate to see in game and never want to see made, and why. Thanks for listening. I've been a Mascot, and happy scaping.